He's a federal law enforcement officer. He was ambushed and shot multiple times while grocery shopping just because he's wearing a shirt identifying himself as a law enforcement officer. He's here to tell us about the story and his miraculous recovery. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Today radio show. I'm your host. My name's John J. Wiley. In addition to being a radio broadcaster, I'm a retired police sergeant. For the latest news articles and much more, check out our website, letradioshow.com. In the Law Enforcement Today show, we'll be joined by special guests. We'll be talking about their experiences and issues affecting law enforcement officers, first responders, their families, their community, and victims of horrendous crimes. Be sure to like us on Facebook. Our page is Law Enforcement Today Radio Show. Check out the daily articles on our website, letradioshow.com. And while you're there, download our free app. Another reason to like and follow us on Facebook. The mobile Facebook app, you can listen to the podcast there for free. So if you ever miss an episode of Law Enforcement Today show, it's always on the mobile Facebook app. You know, the one on your phone, which is free. It's easy to access the podcast and great articles, much more. By the way, feel free to send me a message. Say hello. If I can help you, let me know. That's on our Facebook page. Do a search on Facebook for Law Enforcement Today radio show. Be sure to click like and follow. Calling us from Northeast Florida, we have Drew Stokes on the phone. Drew is a federal agent. Thanks so much for joining us on Law Enforcement Today show. Very much appreciated.
Jay, thank you very much for having me.
It is a pleasure. It's an honor. And I'll be honest with you, and folks, you'll understand why I say this in a few moments. It's a miracle. It's a big deal that Drew is here to tell his story. Before we go into that, I don't know Drew, but I feel like I do. A very good friend of mine, and I remember when this happened, but a very good friend of mine I've known for almost 25 years, named Dave. He used to work with Drew, the same agency. And when I found out about Drew being shot, I called Dave and I said, is this guy okay? He was like, it's touch and go. We don't know if he's going to make it. And it was that severe. And I remember vividly when this happened. And I'm so glad you survived.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate the kind words.
You know, there's really no other way to say it, but it kind of sounds weird when you say, I'm glad you survived, because the reality is I don't know what are the right words to say.
You know, there are no right words in this situation. My situation was catastrophic, and the only thing I can tell you is that the good Lord put the right people in the right place that day to help save my life.
And literally, that's what happened. Might as well get right to the chase. Let's talk about what happened, what you were doing, because this is so out in left field. No one expected.
Right. So it was September 26th, 2017. I was at Publix shopping, and the reason why I was shopping was I was doing an administrative task for work. I work in aviation, and we were going to be flying to Puerto Rico to take it was right after Hurricane Maria had just destroyed the place. And we were flying down to Puerto Rico to bring supplies down, and we were actually taking agency employees off the island with us back to Jacksonville. And during that time, I'd already went once, and we had seen a family. We had a family in the airplane. It was a young girl, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, and her grandmother. And we were bringing them back one night. It was right after the hurricane hit. And you could tell that they were scared in the back of the airplane. They didn't speak English very well. The airplane is, it's a 50 technology airplane. It was dark, cold. There's no windows in the airplane at all, and it's very loud. We realized that they needed something to eat, some food, so we gave them ours. And then that way they could get something to eat. We offered them our beds. We have 4 beds in the back of the airplane. We offered them our sleeping area so they could sleep for the 4-hour ride back to Jacksonville. On September 27th, I was scheduled to fly September 27th, 2017, back to Puerto Rico. So I went to Publix to go and shop for my trip for the next day. Basically, stuff we could cook on the airplane. You know, I had some fish, and then we had some stuff to drink, like orange juice in case we had kids. We had coffee creamer, all kinds of things. We have a electric skillet. We can cook just about anything on board the aircraft. So on that day, they told me to go get some lunch. So I went to grab the food, and then I was going to bring it back to the office. When I was leaving out of the front of the grocery store, I was walking down, and if you know how a Publix is, they have doors on each side, and usually in the middle it's kind of closed off. So, but in the middle is usually where the middle parking spaces are. So I was walking down the one way, through the parking stalls. So all the traffic should have been coming towards me. And I was walking towards my truck. About the time I get to the handicap parking spaces, from behind my right side, I hear a scream of "Hey cops!" It's just a blood-curdling scream. I dropped my groceries, and at that time I put my hand on my weapon, which I was wearing a shoulder holster at the time, which I'll never wear again. When I got my hand on my gun is when the first shot hit me in between my ribs, right under my right arm. Second shot hit me in my buttocks, my right buttock, as I was turning towards the shooter. Third shot hit me in the top of my left leg. Fourth shot hit me in my left leg and went in and out. And then the fifth shot went through my arm in and out. So he shot me as I was falling to the ground. All 5 shots were probably a second to a second and a half, somewhere around there.
And this is just totally out of the blue. By the way, for those outside the Florida area, Publix is a grocery store, and it's a very heavily traveled, very popular grocery store. There's usually lots and lots of people, and they're in big shopping centers. So this was not some sort of isolated place where the attack occurred.
That's correct, and it's in a nice area of Jacksonville as well. Very low crime, lots of large master plan communities, golf course communities. It was a total shock to everyone.
So, Drew, were you in uniform when you were shopping in the grocery store?
I was. I was in uniform, and I had a agency identifying lettering on my back.
And you said that you were wearing your service weapon in a shoulder holster.
That is correct.
So it's obviously not a situation that any law enforcement officer would be going into thinking, hey, that this could be a potentially bad situation. You're just going to pick up some groceries, which, by the way, I never thought. When you guys fly these planes and you're gone, you're in the air for a long time, it's not like you can pull into McDonald's. You got to bring your food or you're going to go hungry.
Yeah, that's correct. And our airplane, we have the capability of flying to 10 to 12 hours at a time with fuel. So in this particular case, we were flying down to Puerto Rico, so we carry enough fuel to come back as well. So it was a 4.5 hour flight, then usually an hour and a half on the ground, and a 4.5 hour flight back. So these were pretty long days.
But there was nothing about this incident that would lead anyone to believe that, hey, other than just getting groceries, I don't need to be on guard. That's
correct. Yeah, it was a total ambush. Out of the blue, nobody saw this coming at all. Just total random act of violence.
So this guy pulled up in a vehicle behind you, started screaming and opened fire almost simultaneously.
That's correct. Yeah, as soon as the words quit coming out of his mouth, I knew. I never even turned and looked at him. I knew there was going to be violence against a police officer of some sort. But my action is always quicker than reaction, as we always know. And so I was just trying to get my gun out, and then I was going to identify my target. But it happened so fast. I saw the last couple shots come out of the gun, and the only thing the impact was so massive, there was no way for me to return fire because I was falling at the same time. So the only thing I could do was brace for impact and then complete my draw once I got on the ground.
I can't even begin to imagine what was going through your mind. And for people listening who don't understand, when really bad situations happen, at least in my experience, when people open fire on you, you really don't have a lot of time to think. You almost just revert back to your training and instincts, and it takes a while to decipher later on why you did what you did. But there's really no training that can be done out there to prevent something like this, or even to be prepared for something like this.
Right. Well, the preparation for this starts in your training. It has to start years before it, and you have to have the mindset for it. Luckily for my agency, I instruct in survival, and I'd actually just taken a survival course about 6 weeks before. So as a law enforcement officer, we have to be mentally prepared at all times that this may happen. I drew, my day came September 26, 2017, and when I got down on the ground, once I finished falling and completed my draw, I immediately started searching for targets because I thought the guy was going to come back and get me.
Absolutely.
And it was automatic. I never even had to think about it. I had my gun out. I had all the slack out of the trigger, and then I saw feet coming towards me. There was a white F-150 in front of me, and I saw the feet coming towards me, and I thought it was a shooter. I had already made the decision I was going to kill that person because I was convinced it was a shooter. I rotated my body around. I want to say I got all the way around the back of the truck, but I probably didn't in reality. But the person who came around the the truck was actually a civilian that was coming around to help me. It wasn't the shooter, and I recognized that. I had a target, but I identified it as a good guy, basically. I was in an open field, and if I was going to send the bullet, where was I going to send it? So it was actually, all those thoughts actually went through my head in a split second, and I decided not to pull the trigger. We're
going to take a short break. We're talking with Drew Stokes. He was ambushed and shot in uniform simply for being a cop. This is Law Enforcement Today's show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Has this ever happened to you? You sign up for a free email newsletter, and within hours, you're receiving tons of spam. That won't happen when you subscribe for the free Law Enforcement Today radio show email newsletter. We won't spam you. No more than 2 emails a week. I promise. All subscribers are automatically entered in all future contests. Sign up at letradioshow.com. Scroll down to the sign up area. That's letradioshow.com. Return a conversation with Drew Stokes. Drew is a law enforcement officer for a federal agency. He was ambushed and shot multiple times at a grocery store simply for being a cop. Drew, winter break, you're talking about this guy unloaded on you. He screamed some profanity and that he hates police, hates cops, and opened fire. You never met the guy, didn't know him, had no interactions with him, I assume.
That's correct. Yeah, I had no idea who he was. It turned out to be a kid that lived in my neighborhood.
About how old was he when this happened?
He was 18.
That's it. And a reason I'm bringing it up is people go, his kid's just a teenager. And then they show a picture in the news of him in his 8th grade graduation or confirmation photo or something else when he's really angelic. An 18-year-old person can end your life. And that's really, you came very, very close to being killed that day. Right.
I actually went into cardiac arrest, and they had to bring me back twice during the process. So, yeah, it was 18 and 3 days old.
How old were you when you were shot?
43.
Which is still incredibly young.
Yes.
But I remember vividly that phone call I said earlier in the show when I talked to my friend Dave, who since retired, worked with you, and he's like, we don't know if he's going to make it. And when the shooting occurred, they didn't really know that much. It's just this guy got ambushed in a grocery store parking lot, and that's all we know.
Yeah, that's correct. So luckily the Clay County Sheriff got there, Deputy Hawkins. He showed up. He was able to get me a little bit more calm. I was able to before that, I was able to tell the folks around me to call 911, tell them officer down. I was able to tell them to call my command duty officer. I gave them the full number and the person who was on duty that day. And then I started directing traffic. I told them to keep the blood in the container, keep the blood in the container, keep the blood in the container. The container's me. Because there was a huge river of blood running beside me, and I knew I was in trouble. And I told myself to wiggle my toes because I needed to set small goals at that point. And again, I'd been trained for this, since I've become a law enforcement officer, even all the way back to when I was in the Coast Guard. And so I told them to keep the blood in the container, and I'm the container. So they started plugging holes. As Jake and the rest of the Clay County guys get there, Jake does an assessment on me. And first thing he does is he leans over and says, "Bro, I got to put a tourniquet on that left leg." And again, we did tourniquet training in our survival courses, so I knew what it was going to feel like. And that's something where we really excel is we do this training and we make guys do it right, and that's super important. Then they put another tourniquet on my left arm. So at this point, I had 7 bullet holes, including the in and outs, and 2 tourniquets. And then after that, Jake actually stuck his right index finger into my rib cage to stop the bleeding from there. At this point, I was in a significant amount of pain, and I had enough.
I can't even begin to imagine. And to be honest with you, Drew, I have no idea what to say for what you went through. And there's a lot more to the story about your recuperation, obviously, which we'll get to. But the other part is responding officer to be confronted with someone. None of us are strangers to people who've been shot. I hate to say that, and they are still alive. And I've been in scenes where many have taken their last breath. But to have another law enforcement officer, it doesn't matter whether they knew or not, and had the presence of mind to stick my finger in a bullet wound to try to stop the bleeding, I don't know how he dealt with that then and after.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing guy. He had done some medic training through the county and through the Florida SWAT Association, so he was mentally prepared. And actually, he had just had a refresher course the previous month as well, so he was able to stay calm and stay focused, and he made all the right decisions. He put an occlusive dressing over the hole in my rib cage. Like I said, he had the 2 tourniquets. Jake did a great job with triage and then directing traffic around me until the guys from Fire Station 26 could get there and get me loaded into the ambulance and off to the hospital.
And have you had a chance to know him or come to know him after this?
I just talked to him this morning.
Do me a big favor, and he doesn't know me from Adam. Same with the firefighters, the EMTs. Tell them all I said thank you for what they do as well, because they're very underappreciated as well.
Oh, absolutely. They part of my strategy going forward is to get more recognition for firefighters and also the trauma staff, trauma surgeons, trauma nurses. Those people, they're just people never think about them and what they go through on a day-to-day basis with life and death, and they were I would not have survived without them.
And truth be told, you barely survived. From what I understand from my conversation with our friend Dave, and also what I've read, that you were in a medically induced coma, and they didn't know for a long time whether you would pull through.
Right. So they finally get me loaded into the ambulance, and I had to have the will to live at this point. At this point, it was still up to me to have the will to live, and I had the will to live. I wanted to, like I said, I set those small goals. Set the small goal to get into the ambulance. I made it. I passed out in the ambulance. I was like, all right, I want to be alive when I get to the hospital. So I actually passed out. I woke up as I went to the trauma bay. They pulled me out of the back of the ambulance. I saw my supervisor, and then I saw another one of my coworkers. And then after that, I passed out. I don't remember anything till I woke up. I do know that upon their assessment, the CAT scan, they figured out that one of the bullets, the first bullet, went through my liver, and it was a lot of bleeding internally. Dr. Shrakaglu, they opened me up, and he thought he got my liver all stitched up. They brought me out. Basically, as you know, Jay, when a cop gets shot, people come to the hospital. There were probably they told me 250 people in the waiting room. They brought me out. I coded in front of everybody. They put me back into surgery, opened me back up again. During this time, the shooter's friends said that they were going to come to the hospital and finish me off, so they put my guys from my agency and Clay County Sheriff's Department in the OR to protect the surgeons and the trauma staff and me, which is pretty incredible. You think you go to work with a guy, and then 3 or 4 hours later, you're actually watching his intestines being taken out of his body. It's pretty crazy thing to see.
This whole scenario is beyond explanation, and we're talking about the United States of America. We're talking about Jacksonville, Florida, where you're severely shot, you're in surgery, you're in a hospital, and friends of the shooter, for lack of better words, saying they want to come to the hospital and finish the job.
That's correct.
That's like made for television movie kind of stuff, but it's reality, and this happens. And I hate to say this. It's not an isolated incident. No,
it's not. It's very unfortunate. And then during surgery number 2, it looks bad. They end up putting 19 trauma units of blood in me, and it's coming out faster than they can put in. So the trauma surgeon, Dr. Shrakaglu, goes and prepares my wife that I'm going to die. Says that he doesn't know if I can make it, if they can get it to stop bleeding or not. He tells her he's going to try.
And on that note, we're going to take a short break. We are talking with Drew Stokes. He's a federal agent who was ambushed and shot multiple times, barely survived, simply because he's a cop. This is a Law Enforcement Tod show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. One of the most frequent questions we see is, where can I find great podcasts? Do you have any suggestions? Yes, we do. So we decided to start our own podcast network on Law Enforcement Today. That's right. You can find top podcasts about law enforcement on our website and our free app. Go to letradioshow.com, click the Be Heard tab, and there you'll find the LET Podcast Network. We'll be adding more podcasts from first responders and more. Again, to find the Law Enforcement Today Podcast Network, go to letradioshow.com and click on the Be Heard in our menu, or download our free app today at letradioshow.com. valiant.com. Back to our conversation with Drew Stokes on the Law Enforcement Today's show. Just a recap for those tuning in recently. Drew's a federal agent. He is in the Jacksonville, Florida area. Went to a grocery store to get some lunch supplies for the next day in uniform. Was ambushed and attacked by an 18-year-old who said he hates police and then opened fire. Drew, you were shot multiple times. When we went to break, you were coded once. You're in the hospital. They're bringing you back in for a second round of surgery. And the shooter's friends are talking about come to the hospital to finish the job. This is just so insane. It's impossible to even picture in my head. Take us to what happened next.
So Dr. Srakaglou goes back in after telling my wife, Amanda, that I'm probably not going to make it. They can't get the bleeding in my liver to stop. Multiple sutures. And from what I was told, he was sewing the liver up blindly. He couldn't even see the where the bullet had went through. So it gets down to the end, and they're considering calling my time of death. And Dr. Srakaglou, this is where I don't know exactly what happens, but I believe, from what I understand, Srakaglou, he says I just need a little bit more time, and as far as I'm concerned, the hands of God came down and, guided his hands to the right place, and he was able to find the bleeder, and he tied it off. And I was nowhere near out of the, as we know now, I was nowhere near out of the woods, but it turned out to be the move that saved my life. And
everybody else was ready to give up, and he said, "I'm going to give it one more shot."
Yeah, so I transferred my will to live to Dr. Srakaglou, and when I passed out, and he gave me life.
When it comes to the emergency trauma teams, our doctors, our surgeons, our nurses, they are so undervalued, and people really don't have a concept of what they do. And I'm sitting here because I have several shootings of officers I've known that we didn't think they'd make it, and they survived because of these people and their commitment and their talent level and their God-given talent and their inspiration. And some of them will tell you they don't know where it comes from.
Right, and this is what I told the trauma staff when I got a chance to speak to them publicly, was that I want to thank them for the path that they chose. They chose such a difficult journey, and they did it willingly. These people, they go to school their entire 20s and early 30s, times when the rest of us are out partying and having a good time or starting a family, and they're in books and they're working 36, 48-hour shifts, and they're doing it so they can save lives. And in all the medical profession, the nurses, the doctors, like I said, the trauma nurses, trauma docs, they're a special breed, and they stayed with me the entire way. We've created a huge bond between my family and the folks at the Orange Park Medical Center. It's been unbelievable, the bond that we have created.
And they're used to a lot of people dying, no matter how dedicated and how persistent their efforts, they're not always successful. So people like you are an exception, aren't you?
No, there's no doubt about it. And I try to go by and see those folks anytime that I can. I swing by the hospital, and I just try to smile, and I'll go into the trauma ICU, or if I can find one of the docs that worked on me through my time in the hospital, I just go up and give them a big hug, and just because I want them to see my recovery, and I want them to see the fruit of their hard labor and how much they mean to me. And that's the only thing I can do is continually show up and do anything that they want me to do. If they want me to talk to another patient or anything I can do volunteer wise around the hospital, all they have to do is ask me, and I'll be there. It's the least I can do.
I say this every now and then. I don't say it very often because people get a little weird. If you ever doubt whether miracles really do happen, Drew is a perfect example that they do.
Absolutely.
And it's the hands of people that inspired, my personal belief, inspired by God, that they can't do it by themselves. And the really, really good ones, when you talk to them, will tell you. I get a lot of help, and they can't always tell you where it comes from.
Yeah. I believe you, Jay, and like I said, all those people that were put in my path that day were put there for a reason, and they were there specifically to make sure that I got more days on Earth.
How extensive were your injuries? You said you were shot, was it 7 times?
I was shot 5 times. 2 were in and out. So the first bullet, it went through my ribs, went through my liver, and then stopped in my thoracic spine. So it's 2 millimeters from my T12 vertebrae. The second one went through my right buttocks. It went through my rectum internally and stopped inside my left hip. So it's in between my pelvis bone and my bladder. I ended up on a colostomy bag for 5 months on that one, so my rectum could heal. The third one, it hit the top of it, went in my leg. It hit the pelvis and then kind of slid inward a little bit. And so the first 3 bullets are still in my body. The fourth one was in and out, and the fifth one was in and out. And I've had no problems with the fourth and fifth bullets, but the other ones they're the 2 in my pelvis especially. They're a significant amount of daily pain. I had 11 abdominal surgeries, so I have a large scar that bisects me from the bottom of my rib cage to the top of my belt line, and it's pretty nasty. What I tell people is I look like I got in a fight with Edward Scissorhands.
I'm glad you haven't lost your sense of humor. Maybe that's the only thing that really helps sometimes, because it's so dark and so desperate, the situation you're in. Maybe dark. And you know what? Every cop I know has a great sense of dark humor. Right.
And my mom said this, and I didn't think of it till last year when the anniversary of the shooting happened. And she said, during this whole thing, you never complained. You never said, "Why me?" It was from the second that they brought you out of sedation. It was how can I get better? I just want to get better. Never blamed anyone. Never did anything. Just the only thing I want to do was recover.
And that makes me feel bad, to be honest, because sometimes it's so easy to fall into a trap of, I've got these permanent line of duty injuries, and why me? Woe was me.
Right.
The poor me thing, and it can be contagious and get further and further in this dark hole. But we hear people like you, and you're not the first man or woman that we've had on the Law Enforcement Today show that has, by all reality, by all measures, should have died or could have died, that survived. And then they're telling us how much they enjoy their life, and I'm like, dude, I feel horrible. I feel guilty for complaining about old man stuff.
Yeah, well, Jazz, given a second chance at life, and I'm not going to let a single second pass me by that I'm not going to enjoy. The first thing I wanted to do was try to get out of bed. Obviously, I couldn't whenever I came out because I just couldn't move any. I couldn't move any part of my body. It was just I'd atrophied so much. But I was determined to recover, and I was determined. The first thing I really wanted to do was get off pain medicine. So I got out of the hospital and rehab on October 31st, 35 days after the shooting, and I was on only ibuprofen about probably mid-November somewhere because I wanted to get better, and it hurt, and I was in a lot of pain, but I knew that it was going to take getting through the pain to get to the other side. I knew masking it with medicine or narcotics or anything like that, because they would have prescribed me whatever I wanted, but I specifically said no. Because it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to hurt. It was a bad deal. I got a bad draw, but I still needed to. I needed to recover. I didn't need to sit around and feel sorry for myself.
And by the way, I'm glad you made that decision as well. We've had guests on the show that have had multiple orthopedic surgeries, were prescribed the heavy-duty painkiller opiates, and that created another monster that none of them were prepared for. And that, in and of itself, can kill, and it's killed many, many people. So people like you that survive these horrible, horrible assaults, have lifelong catastrophic injuries, can be taken out by becoming addicted to opiates. And people love to say they made a choice. Well, last time I checked, the only thing you chose to do that day was go grocery shopping.
Yeah, that's correct. That's absolutely correct, Jay. That's the only thing I did was go grocery shopping, and also made a choice not to take the pills. The last time I was prescribed pills, so I had my ileostomy reversal on February 23rd of 2018, and they had me on pain medicine, and I was off probably mid-March is when I was off pain medicine, and I haven't taken anything. I haven't even taken an ibuprofen since then.
And that's probably part of the reason why you're here to talk about it. This is Law Enforcement Today's show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Miss an episode of Law Enforcement Today? You don't have to anymore, because now you can listen to it on Podopolo, the free new app that makes listening anytime, anywhere so easy. Catch up on shows you've missed and chat with John J. Wiley right there too. Download for free on the Apple or Google Play stores. That's Podopolo. And John J. Wiley wants to hear from you inside Podopolo.
I'm John J. Wiley, joined on the phone by Drew Stokes. Drew is a law enforcement for a federal agency, and he was ambushed and shot multiple times simply because he's a cop in Jacksonville, Florida. By the grace of God, survived and is here to tell your story. And I'm so thankful you've joined us, Drew. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And one of these days, I'm going to get up to Jacksonville, visit friends, and we're going to go have a bite to eat and share a cup of tea and talk some more. And that invitation goes to your wife as well. I read somewhere about the incident that your wife became aware before she was even really officially notified that you'd been shot. Tell us about that.
Right. So I had called Amanda and told her that I was going to, I was just stopping by the store, see if we need anything for the house. And she said no. So I go into Publix, I get shot. So when the officer down call goes off, obviously all the TV stations are listening to the police radios all the time. So when the officer down call goes out, it obviously gets broadcast on the local, to all the cars or however they do it. The media puts out, federal agents shot outside the Oak Leaf Publix. Well, my neighborhood, somebody reposted that on a Facebook page right away, and she was at her job. So she gets the notification on her phone. Well, she immediately knows that it's me. And so she starts trying to call. So I'm laying on the ground, and I think this is probably even before Jake and those guys get there. And I had an Apple Watch on, and I look, and then I see it coming up. It's her name just keeps popping up on the inside of my watch. And I'm like, I can't answer that because I didn't want her to hear me in the state that I was in, because I was screaming, yelling. I was really mad. And I did not want her to hear that. I figured at the time she probably knew what had happened, but I wasn't going to answer the phone. And she's still a little mad at me for that. There was just no reason for her to hear it. And then another coworker called me at the same time, but I didn't answer any phone calls because I just at that point it was up to me. I had to live, and it was just I was at a very primal state at that point of just.
That's
trying
a great
to survive.
word. It's a great word, and it's the only word I've come up with that can accurately describe, to any degree, the reaction I had when people tried to kill me. And I was very fortunate in my career, in my incidents. I was never hit, but it's the rage that comes out of me is indescribable. And the only word I can come up with is primal. That it's a very primitive thing. It's very instinctual from way back, and maybe the caveman days. I don't know where it comes from, but it's not pretty, and I wouldn't want my wife to hear it or see it either. No,
she didn't need to hear or see that. It was, like I said, it was. I absolutely believe you, Jay. I was back in the caveman days.
I'm kind of amazed. No, flat out, I'll change that. I'm very amazed that you had the presence of mind. You're laying there, you're shot. You said earlier you saw a river of blood next to you. You knew this was a bad situation. And your phone is ringing, and you're looking at it and making a conscious decision that I'm not going to answer the phone call. Right.
Yeah. You could have. Because the phone call could have went a lot of ways. If it would have been her there, and I'd heard her crying, and it may have changed my mindset. I don't know, but I know at that point that I had the will to live, and I had the will to live to talk to her when I was well. I didn't want that to be, the last. The last thing she ever heard was my voice screaming and crying in pain, because she didn't need to hear that. There was no reason for her to hear that. Like I said, she tells it a much different way, but she's, like I said, I think she would still come to the door and knock me out now.
Well, please tell your wife that I want to offer to her sometime in the future to come on and tell her story from her perspective, because that's a part of what law enforcement officers' families go through, that they never really get the opportunity to tell their story. And the other thing was, it's okay that she got angry. I recall one of the last shootings I was ever in, and that I called my wife because I knew it'd be late, and I knew she'd see it in the news and let her know I was okay. And she was furious. That primal rage again. And now I understand it. when I get really fearful, I get very angry. And maybe that's where that primal rage comes from. So for her to get very angry, I understand that's a fear-based reaction. Right,
yeah, and that's all it is. She just, like with your wife, she just wanted to know that you were okay, and I can understand that. I'm sure that's what a lot of us in law enforcement, we go out, we do these things, and, there's breaking news of an officer hurt somewhere, and then, obviously the spouses, whether they be husbands or wives, they want to know that their spouse is okay. But oftentimes when we're right there at the scene and we're dealing with the problem at hand, we don't have time to make that phone call. And that's just something to where, especially, if your spouse is not in law enforcement or any type of service like that right there, it's hard to convey that to them gently, which I'm very, very bad at.
Yeah, I'm not very good at it either. And I don't want to become good at it either, to be honest with you.
No, neither do I.
So you're laying there. You were in the hospital and rehab for a little over a month, and then you came home.
Right. So I came home. I ended up going back in the ICU for 2 days. They found a fissure, what they call a fissure in my intestines, where something happened. One of my intestines ripped. So I had to go without food and drink and everything for 2 weeks during football season, which was really, really, really hard. And then I kept going to wound care, and actually I started going back to my CrossFit gym. So I started in December. I started going back to CrossFit. Now, I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was just doing squats and throwing a ball against the wall and just doing walking when the classes were running. But it was I had to get back to that physical fitness aspect of where I had to keep my body moving, and I wanted to be back part of that CrossFit experience where I had all these people around me, cheering me on. Come on, let's do this. Do one more squat. Do one more ball slam or whatever. And it was just the folks at Blackfin CrossFit were incredible in helping me recover. And then the folks at the Orange Park Medical Center, inpatient and outpatient rehab, are still they're just unbelievably kind people. I'm still in outpatient rehab today.
By the way, the whole exercise thing, all the experts tell me that's one of the best things we can do for our mental health in addition to our physical health. So I'm sure that helped you recover mentally and emotionally to some degree as well.
Yeah, you bet. I've been a CrossFitter for 6 years up until the shooting, and Dr. Schrocklu said that absolutely was a key to my survival. Not only because I'm a big guy and I'm strong, but because my cardio, I was in such good cardio shape that my heart was able to take the loss of blood. And he said that was a huge contributing factor to my survival. And I went back in December of 17, and I've been going back ever since, and I'm slowly getting back. I'll never be 100% of where I was just because my abdomen is just trashed. But I'll get back. I'll probably get back to 80% of what my old 100% was.
Well, that's pretty darn good. One of the last things I want to cover before we leave. This is something that I was taught early on from the police academy to every in-service, and people who aren't in law enforcement won't get it. But we're explaining this. One of the things we're always told is no matter how bad the situation, you got to stay in the fight, and that's obviously what you did mentally. That you were not going to give up.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I was never going to give up. There was and stay in the fight, John. That's exactly right. That's what we teach. That's what I would tell any, especially young cop listening, that may find yourself in a jam one day. You can't give up. You've got to have the will to live. That's what I call it. It's the will to live. The formula that I use is positive mental attitude plus 98.6. PMA plus 98.6 equals life. You've got to have that positive mental attitude. I guarantee you, if I thought I was going to die that day in a parking lot, that's exactly what I would have done. But I wasn't willing to let that happen. That's why I set these small goals, and I had the will to live, and the achievable goals. Once I achieved them, I went on to the next one and kept my mind occupied with that rather than I may never see my wife again. So I didn't let that cloud my thoughts.
This is great advice for everybody too. I hear cancer patients talk about it that no matter what, they were going to stay in the fight. They refused to give in. They refused to die. That's what they credit a lot of that from, their survival from. And a lot of, I believe, comes from a divine inspiration of some sort. Drew Stokes, thanks so very much for joining us on Law Enforcement Today show. Man, your story, you're telling your story is very much appreciated, and I can't wait to meet you.
Thanks, Jay. Same here.
I'd like to thank our guests so much for coming on the Law Enforcement Today radio show. The Law Enforcement Today radio show is a nationally syndicated radio show broadcast on numerous stations once a week and growing. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, please do me a big favor. Tell a friend. I'll be back in just a couple days with a brand new episode of the Law Enforcement Today radio show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.